You've tuned in to chipsgrooveradio with your hosts, Mike and John.
So is this your type of game? Is it a...
You know what? I would say before I played it, probably not. It's kind of a adventure game, but it's not, I guess it's a platformer. I don't know. It's hard to describe because it's not like a hard game.
Yeah, it definitely feels more chill.
Yeah, it's definitely a chill game. And it's probably what, when I started playing it, kind of drew me towards it, was that it was a lot more chill. And it's games like this. And then when I played, in similar vein, played Spiritfarer. That was also a very chill game. Yeah, and I think it kind of
along the
shaped
same lines.
Yeah, kind of shaped a little bit, changed my perspective on this kind of game.
Yeah, it's always fun to discover new things, especially as I'm getting older. I'm noticing I like sometimes just the sit back and experience the game rather than high octane,
right?
Always in your face, deep stories. So something like this, something like even what was the game? Limbo. I don't know if you ever played that.
I've seen it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but it's quiet and it's just simple puzzle solving.
Yeah,
with some difficult areas, but it's not like your typical game that I would gravitate towards. I actually had a lot of fun with games like that. And yeah, it's good when you can discover that.
For sure.
Let's get a little bit of a rundown of Journey.
Yeah,
John, if you'd like.
Yeah, Journey is kind of a puzzle adventure platformer game that came out, I believe, on the PS4 first, or maybe PS3.
It was 3.
Yeah. Exclusively, and was a game where there was no actual nobody talked in the game. You were just a little robed figure with a scarf in a desert, and you had a very clear goal in front of you to get to the top of a mountain. And along the way, you would encounter little other pieces of scarves. You would build your scarf up to be more powerful, and you could fly for longer, basically. A very interesting part of the game that I don't think it was ever advertised, was that it was multiplayer, but in a way that you didn't know who was joining your game, and you didn't know how long they would be in your game for. They would just travel along with you for a little while. And if you ever got too far apart from each other, they may drop from your instance. And you only spoke in these like chirps you could send out. But other than that, there's no name tags or anything like that. You don't know who was there. So, and I think it was at least not widely known that it was multiplayer. People thought it was just an AI or whatever that was joining you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and it's an extremely beautiful piece of work of art game. There's really nothing like Journey. Even now, I can't think of a game that it kind of evokes the same feeling. And I feel like one of the things I am regretful of is that, I not regretful that I didn't have a PS3, but I never got to enjoy the first look at Journey and the out of the box, no spoilers, no nothing. I had to play it way later on the PC. So it was interesting. I wish I had that kind of that moment in time where it was a bit of mystery.
Yeah, I was very aware of Journey, and I did have a PS3 at the time. Although I did not play it, I was very aware of it. I had an interest in it. I just never pulled the trigger.
Yeah,
I think the artfulness came through to me right out of the gate. Just kind of watching the demo and seeing some footage, it looked interesting, and I think that these indie titles that they can get away with really cool and unique stuff like that multiplayer thing where people are actually experiencing it with you, but you guys didn't decide to do it and you didn't know it was going to happen. I think that kind of stuff is really cool, and I can imagine it added to the gameplay, especially in the time when it's like you're exploring the game together.
Yeah.
Even though you have no idea who these people are. And I can imagine that being pretty fun.
Yeah, you come up with your own little languages too, with like the beeps and stuff. If you figure it out, it's another person. And if you have those moments of terror when you think that you lost that person and they went off too far, and like, oh, my friend's gone, and then they pop up around the corner, and there's a sense of relief. And
I think I read that at the end of the credits, it shows you everyone who participated.
Yes, I believe
in
that's
your journey.
True. Yep.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
like,
Like, it doesn't name them until you beat the game.
Yeah,
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, and it has such a strong sense of what the game is and what it's about. Really, there's no other game that clearly lays out what your goal is and kind of what you're all about, with also so much mystery as well. So many lines to fill in on your own. There's these like paintings and these kind of hieroglyphical pieces of art that you find, kind of explain what's going on, but in a way that it's very interpretive. It's so interesting that the game has such a strong direction, but also has that layer of ambiguity that kind of lets you fill in the meaning.
Yeah, the goal is just to get to the mountain, and you know it from the beginning, but you encounter all this other stuff along the way, and that's really cool.
Yeah. And of course, the music in this game, because this is a music podcast, is one of the best soundtracks of any video game out there. Composed by Austin Wintory. He's composed a lot of films and other games. It was also performed or recorded, at least the non-electronic parts were recorded by the Macedonia Radio Symphonic Orchestra. Shout out to them.
Shout out.
But it was notable that it was the only video game soundtrack to ever be nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media, at least at the time.
That's awesome.
But yeah, Austin did Flow, which was kind of the predecessor to Journey. Same game company, similar idea, where it's a very abstract game, puzzly. You're the wind basically blowing flower petals around. They also did Command and Conquer Rivals, Tooth and Tail, The Banner Saga, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and he's done a bunch of films as well. So very prolific,
storied career. This guy,
100%.
And I can see why, just having listened to this soundtrack a couple times, and this is my first dabble into Austin Wintory, and I'm very much looking forward to my next one, just based off of this.
Yeah,
because while the other projects may not be similar or along the same vein, this is expertly crafted.
100%. This whole soundtrack is just gives you the sense of longing and hope, but also sadness. It kind of drifts into that tense and dramatic feeling at times. Just like your main character kind of gets into trouble, and just like your main character, it's kind of a flow throughout this entire soundtrack. There's a ebb and flow that you kind of feel the waves crash upon you throughout this entire soundtrack.
Yeah, it's very somber, but it's very alluring, and I got a mixture of emotions listening to the soundtrack, and I mean, I'll dive into it later on, but I think I was a little off base with how I was interpreting some things, but I would like to chat about this soundtrack and kind of get your take on what you felt and what emotions came out for you, because while I didn't know the story of Journey, so I didn't quite piece everything together, but we'll get into it. Oh man. But I mean, even the opening track, Nascence, what struck me was the hinting at the experience you're about to have. It's very beautiful, very melodic, and the main theme, which presents itself a few times on this record, is just very delicate and interesting to listen to, because it's not playful. It toes this line between sadness and contentment, I would say.
And you have that, like, it starts out with that single cello, which I think is a lot of times is the player yourself. That's kind of your character, is this somber cello that is kind of all alone, but then you get another violin a little higher up that kind of answers your call. And I think that's kind of the feeling of this entire game, is you are ostensibly alone, but like with the multiplayer thing and with how the end happens, and the rest of the kind of laid story, you realize you aren't, and you're being pushed along this journey. Said the title.
There it is.
With kind of the trappings of the past, like the past is pushing you forward, and all the people, your community or whatever formed you as a character, kind of has pushed you along this journey to the end.
Yeah, I got the sense that there was this inner drive to move forward in the games. From the music, there's definitely a feel of pressing on despite your surroundings and despite any dangers or the past. I got a lot of that coming through.
Yeah,
and I just think that which song was it? It was Threshold. It's a much different, even light-footed song. It's got a light guitar and a harp that calls out this jaunty tune as this flute kind of prances along, and it's beautiful. It's short, but it's effective at telling this part of the adventure. You're compelled to move forward. Exploration is afoot in this song. With the various instruments playing off of each other, I think there's a real mysticism in that song and a real history to be discovered.
It kind of shows the brilliance of this entire soundtrack, where you have these moments in these tracks that are maybe playful or have that sense of exploration. Then it kind of falls back into that driving, somber forward motion that you get from the opening track. But this is like a nice, gives you that permission to take extra time, search the surroundings, look for any hints of exploration or history to find. And I think the game is really interesting in that, you could speed through it in no time, but it really invites you to take the time and look around, and not even just look around. There's moments in Journey where I would just kind of pan the camera around, standing on a rock, and taking in just how some of the flitters were moving, and kind of gives you that permission to take a break.
And that's part of the beauty of it. It gives you that desire to explore your surroundings and see what else there is.
Yeah.
And I can get that simply just from the music, and not having played the game again. It's one of those things where I can feel that desire, that urge to move forward and to stand still, to take your time with the area.
Yeah, and another track along those lines, like Threshold, is the Road of Trials.
Yes, very much.
It's a nice break from those slower, flowy songs, It's a lively track with a hearty violin up front dueling with a flute. You know, broken up by a section of pause where you're kind of given permission to wait and look around and take in the new surroundings, but then immediately goes back into that lively, playful song. There's some interludes in the background of like the main theme, kind of putting that earworm in you, saying there's that objective is still out there, that mountain is still there to climb. You can't spend too long here, and you know that crescendo towards the end that leads into that one final burst of melody before you get that dark and kind of sinister turn. It leaves on that like cliffhanger. It's great.
Yep. Yeah, it's extremely lighthearted. It's got a flitting flute and a clapping drum beat, or well, I would say maybe bongo.
Yeah,
but it's just utterly joyous, despite that song title suggesting maybe turmoil or stress. You know, it's a road of trials to become better or to succeed and persevere, rather than to hinder you. And I think that's an interesting take on it. The strings really expel their delightful mood and play a melody that's just. It's somewhat fast and exciting, along with that bongo beat. But a standout track for this album, for sure.
For sure. It's great to have those bits of breakup between the kind of slower songs. That and the having that melody kind of drive you along throughout the entire game gives you also that tie-in to the final objective. Like, you know, you're trying to figure out what happened. You're trying to figure out about this world. But in the end, the only thing that really matters is getting to your destination and climbing that mountain. And those trials that you go through are good, but they're like, they happen and you leave them behind kind of thing.
Now, does the music, and I apologize if you have mentioned this, but does the music kind of adapt to what's going on with you on screen, or is it?
I think it's sectional. I think
relegated to sectional.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if each like screen or each level, you know, quote unquote level, has its own soundtrack.
I was going to say, because Temptations, another track on this that I enjoyed, it takes us from that joy, from that explorative nature, and brings us the other end of that. You know, it opens with a timpani to put forth something untoward. It captures a different element of the album, and maybe it's the first track that I can remember that isn't mysterious or happy, and it's hinting at maybe the danger of the moment. It's not quite sinister, but rather unsure and suggestive. You know, are these temptations good or bad? For such a relaxed game, it takes it a different direction, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think, listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Temptations happens when there's like a mini boss in the middle.
Okay.
More that you're just kind of hiding from him for the most part. It's a big like dragon thing with a big eye, big like search eye on it. And I think that's where this is, or you're in the dark, outside of the sun, in these caverns that you kind of fell into, and you're searching around, and you get caught by this creature. And I think it has that sinister, like maybe metaphorically, the temptations of giving up the journey and being in this cavern, and you know, not following through on your quest to get to the top of that mountain. it's kind of where that temptation comes from, and that kind of sad, somber, almost fearful or sinister note that comes from.
Yeah, I would imagine in this journey, it's not so much about combat or anything. This game doesn't strike me as something like that. So
No.
I can imagine the music of Temptations, for instance, playing to that hiding from your enemies and escaping imminent danger or not. You know, that temptation to give up, you know, depending on who this character is and how tough the journey is. But another song that kind of is similar in tone, I would say, is Descent. A lot darker, deep into the earth as there's clanking instruments and thunderous timpani. By the end of the song, there is definitely a real threat here.
Yeah.
I got this. This one
That's
seems a little bit more deliberate.
I'm thinking of actually is Descent is the one that has that boss. And yeah, it's very sinister, and yeah, definitely towards the end, you're like, it's we're not alone here.
What do we do? But you know, on top of all that, I wanted to comment on the nature of this album to put the image of tragedy for me.
Yeah,
and again, like I said, I'll probably touch on some of this in my final thoughts, but there's just an air of solemnness. There's an air of being defeated, like maybe even in Fifth Confluence. I really got this feeling of defeat.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how accurate these things are, but I want to say that this album, it evokes a lot of that inner turmoil for me.
Yeah.
And it tells me this story of someone who's on a road to redemption, especially with song titles like Atonement.
Yeah.
You know, that one, that's very much inner turmoil, and the strings sound very remorseful and sorrowful. If I'm not mistaken, that's one of the longer songs on the album.
Yeah.
And it continues to tell this regretful story. It's very painful and sad, but it's never boring.
Yeah.
You know, the song's changing, and then the introduction of bells later on in the song feels almost like a reckoning of past deeds or a rebirth in mood and emotion, perhaps even this character's life. Maybe I'm getting too deep with it, but it's very, very evocative so far, this album.
Yeah,
so I was digging it.
You're definitely not too deep. And that's really, I think, what this whole game is about. It's about the journey of self-actualization and kind of self-discovery, and then at the end there is a rebirth of self, kind of death of ego kind of thing, where so spoilers, I mean, a game that's I don't know, 10, 15 years old or whatever, you should have played it by now. But Nadir, one of the last songs, is towards the end where you're climbing this mountain. I mean, this song just gets to me. It happens towards the end of the game, and it has this weight to it as your character kind of struggles to climb the mountain.
Absolutely.
The desert you started in has given way to an extreme cold of the peak. The wind is whipping you back. The scarf you so carefully grew throughout the game starts to break apart, and the cacophony of sound builds and builds while you slow to a crawl, leaning against the wind, and then it all drops in a flash. Your tired legs, unable to continue, you fall. It's such a deeply sad and like reflective moment. It lingers as that final violin note kind of echoes into the void.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, it is a sad, sad song. And the visuals of the game are just heartbreaking. You're climbing up this hill. You see the graves of other people who have attempted this climb, and you also are unable to do it. And yeah, it's a heart-wrenching moment in the game, and the soundtrack delivers the 1-2 punch.
So you fail in your mission?
So
or
no,
did I understand that correctly? Okay.
You do fall, and then it gives you enough time to think, is this the end of the game? Is the game over?
Okay.
And then you are surrounded by light. These 5 beings are watching you, and you are reborn into light. You whip up into the air, and this is what the second to last track, Apotheosis, is. That is you finally finding yourself and breaking over the clouds into the air, and then flying towards the end of the mountain as a kind of. It's not entirely joyful, but it's extremely powerful song that is also very emotional.
That's awesome. I commented on Nadir as well. I had to look it up because I was almost positive I knew what it meant, but I got that it meant something along the lines of the lowest point, the most beaten down you can be, kind of. And the pain in the strings is very palpable here. Extreme strife in the shuddering strings and loud timpani strikes. The song really crescendos into what I would call almost static by the end, and it's telling me something about overwhelming turmoil. It's an interesting song that it to me it dives into the psyche of what your character must be feeling, and the overlapping instruments piling on top of each other, stepping on each other until it's almost inaudible noise is extremely effective to bring out that inner struggle and pain, or your desire to keep moving despite the odds. And then it just cuts off,
Yeah.
And I think that's really effective. And then you go into Apotheosis, which is the longest track on the album, but it gives that sense of peace to the listener. It's a little wistful and swelling. It feels like the very end of your story. Again, not like you said, not too happy, but there is definitely a peace within yourself.
Yeah.
It's been reached, and maybe you can move on to the next phase of your life, whatever that looks like. So Wintory did a phenomenal job
100%.
with evoking those.
Yeah.
I think he got those messages across.
Yeah, Apotheosis, that whole sequence is hands down one of the best, most emotional sequences. Like, yeah, I cried at that point in the game, and then you still have to play through the end of it where you're flying through these gates and kind of basically flying into heaven, basically.
Yeah,
and these like throughout the entire game, you've been kind of wandering through what is ostensibly a dead culture. You have the whisperings of some life, the scarf that you have, and it kind of speaks to the other cloth, and it's kind of like some of the ways that that your people, I guess, had interacted with this place. You bring some of those cloths back to life to help you on your journey, but as you're climbing the mountain and you're getting to the cold, the ice is freezing the cloth. Even if you bring it back to life for a second, the wind will break it and freeze it back up. So you're just kind of wandering through what is a ruin of what is your previous civilization. And then as apotheosis happens and you burst out through the clouds, you're greeted by these giant scarf whales that are flying and like other flitter bugs and like basically your renewed civilization and kind of the remnants, like the Atlantis of your civilization you kind of find as you travel through these gates, bathed in white light. It is like such a joy. It's joyous, but like very fulfilling ending to the game.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, to have such a simple, and I'm just going to say, no offense to the creators at all. Simple idea, simple look to the game. Something they were obviously going for, but to have that simplicity, that's something that's coming through in almost every aspect of this game. There's a simple goal, simple art design, and then it just takes you to a deep fucking level. That it's giving you these emotions that you did not expect.
Right.
And I can say personally, when I first saw this game and everyone was talking about it, I did not think that would be the type of journey I would be getting into.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm very looking forward to playing it now because it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I would even spoiled. I would still recommend giving it a go because it's a one of a kind game, and it's quick. It doesn't take very long to play through, and the simplicity of the art style and kind of the story, as it were. There's two parts of this piece of art. Half of it is the visuals and the gameplay. The other half is by far the music.
Yeah.
Without the music, this wouldn't be as nearly as emotionally investing as it is. And it's all thanks to his composing and the symphony that played to bring that level of weight to the story as it is.
And it's almost a character in and of itself because the characters in the game, like you said, they don't speak and there's no dialogues per se. So the character of the music is telling us the story along with our actions and discovering the game.
Yeah.
So it makes it much more impactful that way.
Yeah.
There are a couple other games like that I've played, but I look forward to playing this at some point because after listening to this soundtrack, it's like, well, now I got to experience it all. And I just want to say on those notes of you mentioning how you reacted to the game ending and just all the lush landscapes and atmospheres of the music and bringing out these emotions, that's what this is about.
Right.
And that's what this podcast is about. And I'm delighted to know that I'm not the only one out there who who gets moved by the music in the game. But after I listened to this album, I did some research on the game story and I found out I was a little wrong in my interpretations on pieces of music. And while I was keying in on the discovery aspect, I focused a lot on tragedy and a feeling of repentance or something.
Yeah.
I was imagining a character who was coming to grips with something, which he may still be with, the end of his civilization.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a little bit more personal. And I just keyed in on the sadness of it more than anything, because while the game is not this despair-ridden piece of work, I keyed in on the ideas that while the journey is exciting and the adventure is worth exploring, there was something deeper in this character that needed to be explored. And on that note, it got me to thinking of, one, I want to encourage everyone to listen to this album
100%.
Because I know personally it's stuff like this, soundtracks like these that have helped me through really tough times. And despite them sounding or being tragic and dramatic, those times where it's helping people through rough times because you perceive yourself not fitting in, or you've got the sense of being out of place. You almost need to hear those thoughts and emotions coming from somewhere else to feel better.
Yeah, it helps you drive your emotions into a more health. Like it's easy to keep everything in. And you have pieces of art like this, movies, soundtracks, even just songs or by themselves that can evoke emotion in you and kind of draw that away and draw it out of you so you can deal with it. There really needs to be more games like this in the world, because I can list like on one hand the number of games that have evoked an emotion similar or even close to what this has. And it's kind of disappointing that you have such control over the visual audio medium in a video game that it's kind of wasted to a certain extent on a lot of these AAA or games like that, where you don't have the weight or the gravitas or the writing capability or whatever. You don't spend the money on that, or even take chances like Journey with the way that the multiplayer worked, or even the way the game is in general. It's not a typical game, but they took a chance and it was successful. And there needs to be more of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you're saying, there's a lot more focus on what's going to make the most money.
Yeah.
And, if people focus on action, and yes, definitely gameplay is important. But if you take that idea and apply it here, it's very simple in terms of how you play the game, and yet it's so impactful that it's just an astounding story of simplicity and diving deep into emotion. And not every game needs to be like that, but I agree there needs to be more experimentation, more fear, less fear of experimentation and trying new things. And we're getting some of that with indie titles still, just like Journey. We talked about one briefly after recording, and What Remains of Edith Finch is another emotional journey. I went through, I played that a couple of years ago, and it was a very intriguing story, and it's not my typical game, but it kept me going. I beat it, and it's definitely an experience, and I can cherish that kind of thing because it took that chance to be emotional and not be this AAA game that's got 80 hours of intense combat or gameplay.
100%. You got 100% it, man. You got to get
100% it, man.
You got to get the teacups, man. You got to get all the teacups.
Find all of Edith's teacups. But it's stuff like that I really enjoy. And I'm with you 100% on that.
For sure.
So, as we do like to support our artists when we can. And I am happy to say, John, that this album has been released.
Yeah, I literally...
You can buy it.
I literally just ordered the vinyl for it.
Tell me about it, man. You can find it in stock plenty of places, ladies and gentlemen. It's still out there. It's a beautiful gatefold double LP. And I think I saw it in stock at fucking Walmart.com, Amazon. You can also find and support Austin Wintory at austinwintory, WINTORY.com. His website shows all his works and maybe what he's going to be working on in the future. And austinwintory.bandcamp.com. John, is there anything else you would like to say before we give this a rating?
Well, first of all, just to let you all know, we'll be covering Donkey Kong Country 2 next week.
Ooh.
An exceeding, like, the most departure from this, from the Journey soundtrack that you could possibly get.
Dude, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
I cried at Donkey Kong, man.
I cry every time I listen to this.
So if you have any questions or comments or things you want to bring up about Donkey Kong Country 2, feel free to hit us up on the Facebook. But yes. I think this was it was great to come back to Journey, because I played it a couple years ago. Hadn't really focused on the soundtrack, and to kind of take the time and blast it in my office while I was working, and it was great.
Yeah, it's such an excellent album. 10 out of 10 red scarves.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 flying scarf whales for me, for sure.
Flying scarf whales. I gotta go play this game.
Yeah, you should.
I'm going to put Final Fantasy 16 on hold.
It'll only take. Let me hold on. I'll literally tell you how long.
Probably like 3 hours or something.
Took me to play Journey. Let's see. Journey Steam. It took me 94 minutes. So
94 minutes.
Yep. So there you go. No excuses.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, 94 minutes, and we're moved to tears.
Yes. Yeah.
By the end of this thing. That's awesome.
Worth every single penny.
Well, I highly encourage everyone to check that out. Again, Austin Wintory. Check him out and support him. And we will catch you guys next week with Donkey Kong Country 2.
I'm going to fly away.
Fly away.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please rate and subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Also, check out Magus Media's other podcast, This Is Not Happening, Another X-Files podcast for complete episode breakdowns, insightful banter, and inane babble. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Well, hello there, Internet people. My name is Josh, and I am one of the hosts of the Nastagram RPG podcast. We're an actual play podcast, and we're good. And why are we good? Well, let's let the other host tell you. Dan.
Hey, everyone. If you like authentic, real-world sound effects, our lasers go pew-pew.
I love it. Matt.
Skip me. Coming back to Matt.
Ryan.
Okay, so after 2 decades of trying, we finally mastered the 3.5 grapple.
We're not doing that.
We certainly did
Never
not.
mind. Try again.
Scratch that.
Check it out. Look it up.
John?
If you're looking for a RPG podcast that plays a whole hell of a lot of games, we like to spice the life.
Spice it up.
Spice it up.
Matt, you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. If you enjoy bad accents and overacting, you'll enjoy our podcast.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
And Jake, bring us home.
I like to just say, we didn't just throw a phone on the table and hit record. Like, Josh does a damn good job with the editing. And
Facts.
if you care about that, you will not be disappointed.
That's right. We spent a bunch of money that we don't make on the podcast.
100%.
So check us out, Nastagram RPG Podcast. You can find us on all the goddamn podcast apps, and we'll see you there.
That's nasty.